Okay, thank you all for waiting. Michelle here, and I'm back. It's 2 o'clock Eastern on my time, 1 o'clock Central, and a little bit earlier for you folks out west. Um, I'm gonna stall a little bit here because I know we have quite a bit of people registered for this webinar. The number keeps going up, so I'm gonna give it just a couple more minutes for everyone to sign on. But I'll go ahead and give you my little opening spiel, which is that today's webinar is a part of our Cablecast Technical Training Series, which is a series of free trainings that we offer to our existing customers to help you get the most out of your Cablecast investment. And this is a really great repeating series that we have with our Cablecast training team. So they help you with specific features in Cablecast that help you really get a lot of value from the product. So today we're working on the user roles and permissions features. We are going to be recording this training, so you can go back and look at it later. We will distribute that link through the webinar platform, through Zoom, in an email that will come to you tomorrow because you registered. But if you've got other people at your station that didn't register or just couldn't make it for some reason today, we will also have a version of it posted on our website. We now have a webinars section in the help center of our new website, cablecast.tv. So you can find it there. Ryan Hickok is going to be our presenter today. And after he is done with his presentation, we will take Q&A from you folks. So you'll see in your Zoom portal, you do have a little spot for entering in questions. You can enter those in as soon as you have the question. Go ahead and put it in, and then you'll be in the queue. And then as soon as we get through the presentation, we will get to the questions. It's now 2 minutes after, and we've got, I'd say, about 2/3 of our folks here. I think we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to pass it over to Ryan.
All right. Well, thank you, Michelle. Like Michelle said, my name is Ryan Hickok. I am the technical trainer here for Cablecast Community Media. So probably worked with a few of you before, talked to you on the phone, or done trainings with you in the past. So today, like we said, we're going to be going over some user roles and permissions and things that can help you out with your system on that. One of the first things that we kind of want to just talk about before we go is just another little quick housekeeping announcement. Some of you guys have already kind of seen it with some of the communication and press releases and emails that we've been sending out, but our Cablecast ScreenWeave product, our app, is now live and open for people to start using. So the ScreenWeave is a app for over-the-top systems, so like Apple TV and Roku, where you can create a channel and push out your VOD and on-demand content out to those channels to have it accessible for any of your outside viewers that may be cord cutters or whatever it may be in there. This is a service that is brought in, or an application and service that is brought in or added onto the Cablecast Reflect service. So if you do already have Cablecast Reflect, you can jump right into getting into Cablecast ScreenWeave to push this out to Apple TV and Roku. We do have a web page on our website. As you can see down at the bottom, it says for more information. Go to cablecast.tv/ScreenWeave, and it tells you all about it and information about that. If you already are using our live and VOD products and you have Cablecast Reflect, definitely reach out to our sales staff to talk about getting that set up and getting in the queue to get yourself started with pushing that out over the air or over the top. If you currently don't have live or video on demand, or if you don't have Reflect, also reach out to our sales staff. They'll talk to you a little bit more about it and kind of the steps to go with that. But definitely check it out. It's a really great feature. The Roku app is actually live now. That went live last week. So it's now both available on Apple TV and Roku. You just can search for Cablecast ScreenWeave and see some of our customers that are already utilizing that service. And it's a really great feature for that. So with that being said, let's talk about what we're going to be going over today. So kind of the roles or the webinar that we're going to be talking about is user roles and permissions and setting up user accounts and things like that. There's a couple of different things that we're going to be kind of touching base on. The first is going to be talking about the roles that you can actually assign. So the roles are basically the permission or a set of roles or set of permission that has the access rights or permissions that we can assign to that individual. We can set up custom roles that we can assign so we can grant individual access or different features or different functionality within the software that we want to give to those individual users in there. Inside those roles are going to be the different access rights or the permissions that you can assign. So there's going to be a variety of different things ranging from being able to schedule in Cablecast, being able to send autopilot, or being able to go to the force matrix, as well as some of the stuff we'll touch a little bit on Carousel as well with some of the different roles that you can assign for your different users and access rights for that. And then kind of the last thing that we'll talk about is about actually creating the different user accounts and kind of assigning those different roles. So it's pretty kind of the process that I like to go with whenever I go over this is talking about the roles and permissions first so that people have a good understanding of what they do and what they allow and grant access to, and then actually assigning those roles to those different user accounts. So with that, let's actually see what it's going to do, and we'll go into action. So we're going to log into my demo unit here. So we're going to log in here. We're going to go admin, TRMS, and we're going to go to our front door. So all of the user management and roles and permissions is going to be done from the front door user interface. So before you even log into Carousel or log into Cablecast, you're going to go into your front door, and it's all going to be done under this user management section in here. So if you have admin rights to the system, so if you're logging in under your admin account, you'll be able to see everything in here. And the main area that we're going to be working in is our user management. So from under new user management, we can create our user accounts, and it's going to also give us a list of all of our different user accounts. We'll probably talk about that near the end. But then we also have all the different roles that we can assign to our users for front door, for Cablecast, and Carousel. Each set of software is going to have its own set of roles. So it's good to kind of get an understanding of what those roles are and the permissions that you can grant in your different roles. So just to kind of start off, we'll talk about each one of these first individually. We'll talk about front door roles, we'll talk about Cablecast roles, and then we'll talk about Carousel in there. So if you click on the roles, it's going to list your different roles that you can assign to your users. Inside those roles, we have specific rights that we can assign. So like, for example, our admin only has 4 rights that are assigned to it. Our server setup only has 1 right in there. So I'm going to click on our admin just so we can see a list of the different rights that are assigned to that. So with front door, you're not going to be doing very much in there. It's basically server setup, and it's going to be your user management side of things. So primarily, whenever you create a new user account, they don't necessarily need to have front door roles. Front door roles are going to be pretty much for your system administrators, the people that are going to be managing access to the system and things like that. But we do also have some other roles that are in here, or different rights inside those roles. For if some of you guys have already noticed, whenever you log in, you'll get some notifications that are pushed out to our customers for things like today, like our webinar. We push out a notification to our customers promoting different events, saying there's new versions of our software, things like that. You can assign those different roles or those different rights to an individual role and give them so that whenever that person logs in, that will actually populate and appear. So like with our admin role here, we only have access, or we're only giving that admin the rights for front door server setup as well as user management. So pretty much your admin sort of things. Now with our other roles that we have, like our server setup, self-explanatory, that one person only has server setup as their notification or as the role that, or the right that is assigned to that. So depending on kind of what you want to give that individual, you can assign a role that has the rights assigned with it. You can also generate new roles for any of your different pieces of software. So like, for example, let's say I want to have a super user that has all the admin rights plus all the receive notification rights as well. So I can click on a new role. It's going to give me a new role right here. Click on that. I can name this whatever it is. We'll call this one super user as an example. And I can check and assign which ones of these rights that I actually want to assign that to that person. Now, if I only want them to be able to say, oh, I only want to see you having updates, notifications on updates, I don't want to give you any of the other things, we can also do that, where we only give them certain rights and roles that we want in there. And now that role is created, then that we can assign that specific role to that specific user when we get to that point. So front door is pretty easy, self-explanatory, depending on what it is that you want to give. And like I said, if you give a user, or whenever you create a new user, they do not need front door roles to be able to get into something. If they do not have any front door roles, the only things that they'll see is Cablecast and Carousel. If you've given them access or given them roles and rights to those pieces of software, they'll be able to change their password. They'll be able to see about, and they'll be able to log out. They won't be able to go into anything or see anything. So any new user, they don't necessarily need to have that front door unless you actually want to give them administrator rights for basically user management or server setup. Now, Cablecast, we have some other roles that are assigned for this. This is where we can actually assign different things or actions or tasks that we want to be able to give a certain user. So we have some pre-made roles in here with certain rights assigned to them. Admin is going to give you everything, obviously, but we also do have a role for autopilot. So if you only want to give someone the ability to send autopilot or go to the force matrix or whatever it may be, we also have a batch functions role that we've created. So if you want to give them the ability to go into batch functions, we've also got an extras and reporting, a schedule and shows. Now, if I look at my admin, just so we can see a full list of what that is, you'll be able to see the different roles that we have, or the different rights, I should say, that we have in here. Now, some of them are going to be set by location, and some of them are going to be set by channel based as well in here. So location versus channel based would be, location is if that role, that right is going to access the entire system. Channel based right is only going to be for the channel that you assign that person to. So if you guys have multiple channels with your system, so let's say you're a full PEG facility where you have public, educational, and government. Well, one of the users only has, or is only able to schedule on the public channel. You can give them the modify schedule, or you can give them the scheduling rights just for that specific channel level, rather than having them be able to do it on the location level, where they'll be able to access all of your different channels and schedule and send autopilot and different things like that. So with these rights, we have a couple of different things in here. Autopilot, being able to use the force matrix so you can manually route things. We have our autopilot send. We've got batch functions, extras and access, modifying your schedule, which is actually scheduling, programming, moving stuff around. You can also set roles for scheduling crawls if you wanted to use the crawl functionality, if you only wanted someone to be able to do that. We can also do our modify shows. We can do a reporting, access, modify location settings and system settings, so on and so forth with that. So those are the different rights in there. With those different roles, we can actually assign multiple roles to an individual user depending on that piece of software. So if you want someone to be able to schedule and also send autopilot, you can assign your schedule and shows role as well as your autopilot role to that user. Or instead of, if you wanted to, with that autopilot role, it's giving you the ability to go to force matrix as well as send autopilot. Well, let's say you do not want someone to be able to go to the force matrix. You only want them to be able to schedule and send autopilot. That's where we can create those custom new roles, where we can go new role. We can name it whatever we want, but I want to give that person the ability to send, and I only want them to be able to schedule shows. I don't want them to be able to create shows or modify shows. I just want them to be able to schedule on the count or on the schedule, and I also want them to be able to send autopilot. So I can just give that person, name that role specific and unique, and then I can assign that user that specific set of roles in there with only those two rights in it. So it does give you that flexibility of being able to kind of customize and not give them as much, or give them full access to certain things. You can really kind of pick and choose and create those custom roles in there. Now with Carousel, there's going to be a lot of other options in here. Now Carousel is going to be unique, and we'll show you that when we get into the schedule or creating the user accounts and assigning the roles to those different users. But with Carousel, you can also assign your roles for that user on a zone level, which is really nice. Because if you wanted to say, let's say you've got someone from the school board that their only role or the only thing that you want them to be able to do is create a bulletin that says school's closed because of snow or whatever it may be. You can grant them access to just that single zone in your full channel layout. And then you can even break it down, which I'll show you in the actual rights, that I only want you to be able to create a template bulletin, or I only want you to be able to create an alert bulletin, or whatever it may be. You can do that. The pre-made roles that we have are admin, which is going to give you everything. We also have an auto-approve bulletins role, which I'll tell you about here in a little bit. We've got a bulletin creation, which will give someone the ability to create all their bulletins. Managing bulletins is going to be managing your existing bulletins that you've already created, and then giving someone the ability to manage their media. So if I look at my admin roles here, it's going to list all the different rights that are available in here. So we have the ability to create alerts. There's an auto-approve bulletins. And what that does is if you give someone rights to auto-approve their bulletins, any bulletin that they create will be published and go out on the carousel channel. If you uncheck that or you don't give someone the ability to have auto-approve bulletins, any bulletin that they create will go into a unapproved section, which then all of those bulletins have to be approved by an administrator that has the approved bulletins rights down here at the bottom. And then that way they can kind of have that quality assurance and kind of that quality control or spell check, that extra set of qualifications so that you know that you're getting content that's going out properly. But we do have a bunch of other creation ones. So creating extras, being able to go into that extra section in your bulletin creation. If you're on Carousel 7, you'll understand what that is. If you're not on Carousel 7, there's an additional options for some of those additional settings with creating a bulletin. You can create dynamic bulletins, interactive bulletins, repeating bulletins, template bulletins, uploaded, managing your different bulletins, managing the approved, managing your zone media and templates, creating templates, and then you've got your setup of global system-wide configuration as well as zone setup in there. So what's cool with this, like I said, is creating those custom individual roles that you want to assign to different individuals. So let's say I want that one person that we want them to be able to create just template bulletins in a single zone or whatever. I can create my new role. We can say this is going to be my school district or whatever it is, as an example. And I want them to only be able to create template bulletins. So when they go into that section for new bulletins, they're not going to be able to see the uploaded option. They're not going to be able to see their dynamic option. They're only going to see the template section and all the templates that are assigned to that specific zone. Then depending on if I want them to just auto approve their bulletins and publish them out, I can also set that up. So I can really kind of restrict as much access I want to give that person, or I can open it up as far as I want with there, which is really nice, especially if you have those users that are not going in very often. You want to just be able to limit and restrict what it is. Or in the case, like you may have 5 different carousel channels or something like that, and you only want to be able to give them those certain permissions to do certain things. We can do that with those different roles that we can create. So that is the general understanding, kind of the explanation of how those roles are set. So you can create the different roles, and those roles are going to give you the different rights of what you want to give or the permissions to access the software. So now that we kind of have a general good understanding of that, let's talk about creating a new user account. So the user accounts, we can click on there and we can have any of the list of users, and it's going to give us information about here. We can edit users in there, which I'll show you later on. We can also adjust the assignment of the roles that are assigned to that user. But in this case, we're going to click on new user to create a new one. And we're just going to name this one John Doe, for example, today. We're going to call this, his username is going to be John. His password, we're just going to say TRMS, just like our other ones. Username is not going to necessarily be case sensitive. So if you give someone, you have a capital J on this, the username is not going to be case sensitive. So if they do a lowercase j, O-H-N, they'll still be able to access. Your password, though, is going to be case sensitive. So if you do use uppercase, lowercase, special characters, whatever it may be, you're going to be able to give that, and they're going to have to definitely stay with their case sensitivity on there. You do have to put in an email address, so we're just going to say john@trms.com as an example. We do have a checkbox option for here for send welcome message. And what this allows you to do is any user account that you create, you can actually push out an email with what their roles, permissions, what their password is that you assign to them, and everything. Now, the one caveat to that is you do need to set up your mail server into your front door settings. So under your server setup, there is a mail preferences and mail settings where you can assign and set up so that you're accessing your mail server so that it can actually push out those notifications and those emails to those customers. If you don't have that, just uncheck the box and you can leave that alone. We have a note section in here. So if you wanted to put any information in there, say that, hey, this is the person from the school district, or this is our intern that is only in here till this date or something like that, you can put in that individual note for them. Once we hit continue, it's going to give us our screen to assign the individual roles for that specific user. Any new user that you create automatically is going to be assigned the receive notifications role for front door. That is the only role for any of the 3 pieces of software that's automatically going to be assigned. That receive notifications is going to be nice, depending on if you want to have people see when new versions of the software are, when we're having webinars, different things like that. That's a great way to do that. But for your day-to-day users or those people, like, for example, our school district person, they don't necessarily need to see that because they're not going to be using the system very often. They're not administering the system very much with that. So we can remove that role. It's just going to give us confirmation to say that we want to remove that role for sure. Well, you can click OK, and now they don't have any front door roles in there. And like I said, if you don't want to give that person administrator rights to front door, so you don't want them to be able to create user accounts, you don't want them to be able to go into the server setup, just leave your front door roles blank. They'll still be able to see Cablecast Carousel, about, change their password, log out, things like that. They'll still be able to access the system. But to assign a role for front door, click on assign role, and it's going to give us what roles do we want to assign. Do we want to do our admin? Do we want to do our receive notifications, super user, our server setup, user management, whatever it may be. I'm just going to choose admin for this case, and we hit save, and now that admin role has been added to that user for front door. Now carousel, we can do the same thing. We can assign a new role, tells us what the role is that we want to assign to that person. So let's say we wanted to do our school district person. I can go into school district, and then we have another tab here for what kind of level do we want to give this to. The 2 options are going to be zone versus zone tag. Zone is where we can assign that specific set of roles to that individual zone in the full channel layout. So if I only want that person to be able to go into the My First Channel news section and be able to do the roles that I get assigned, or the rights that I assign to that person, when they log in, the only zone that they'll be able to access will be that news section. They'll only be able to see that when they go and click on their drop-down menu to move to another zone. They won't be able to see anything else. So this is really nice to be able to limit and restrict and kind of narrow it down for those different people within Carousel. If we wanted to, I can assign those roles or multiple roles to that person depending on the zone. So if I want to give them news, but I also want to give them the school district roles to my social media section as well, I can assign multiple roles or rights to multiple different zones and whatever zones I want to be able to give them in there. So it allows you to kind of go in there and play around with stuff. So if you don't want to give them any editing ability to your banner logo or stuff like that, if you don't assign that role to that zone, it'll be great. So I'm going to remove these real quick and show you kind of the other option as well. So we can go to our school district person here. We also have our zone tag option. So when you're creating your different channels, you have the ability to tag your zones as well to kind of group them together. So a lot of times you might have all of the zones for your public access carousel channel tagged with public. And you might have all of your government access channels zones tagged with government, things like that. What this will do is it'll give you basically assigning those roles to that blanket of zones that are tagged that way. So if you wanted to say any of the zones that are tagged with my first channel or whatever, that channel layout, all those new zones in there, we can assign the rights or the roles that we assign to that person to that entire zone tag. And then that way we only have one set of roles rather than having to do it for each individual zone at a time. So if we wanted to do it that way, this will give them everything by that tag. Otherwise, we would be adding the roles by a zone level, each individual one in there. Now with our Cablecast roles, we have the roles that we can assign in here, depending on whatever it is that we want. But then we can also choose between channel or location. Now, some of the roles and some of the rights that are in those roles are specific to a channel location versus a location in a sense. Your channel location rights are going to be for like your scheduling and things like that, or modifying your schedule, modifying your crawl schedule as well. So, for example, if you have someone that you only want to be able to schedule shows and you only want them to be able to do it on channel 16, I can assign that person just my schedule and shows role for channel 16, hit save, and now that's the only thing that they're going to be able to do. They will not be able to schedule anything on channel 15. They won't be able to send autopilot, anything like that. Now, if you assign those roles on a location level, so for example, like your scheduling of shows and records, if you did it on a location, it'll basically be system-wide. They'll be able to schedule for both channel 15 and channel 16, and they'll be able to do that for the entire system or the entire location on that. So there are ways to be able to limit and restrict access. Now, one thing that I do see a lot of people do with their Cablecast roles specifically, is that they might create the autopilot roles, but they only want someone to be able to do the force matrix or something like that for like their cable operators at City Hall or whatever, so that they can go back to carousel when the program is ending. You can do that as well. It'll just be on your location level, and you can send that, and we can assign those different roles to that person depending on what it is. Again, we have our checkbox down here if we want to email these roles to that user. So if we did have set up our email server with our front door and our setup, I can push out the notifications or push out the email saying, hey, these are what you have rights to and what you can access in there. Otherwise, you leave it blank and you can return back to your user account. And here is our John Doe that we just created, their email address, the last time they logged in, and it's going to tell us all those. If I wanted to edit the roles that I assigned to that person, I can click on my assign roles. I can remove anything or edit anything that I want on there for that person and add those in. Now you're editing your user. You can actually go in and you'll be able to edit some information about them. You will not be able to edit their username. That is the only area that you're not going to be able to reset or edit or anything like that. So if you have people that are going out and are like that got married and they're changing their name and you're using a first name, last name for their user account, you're going to have to create a new user account if you want their username to be changed. Otherwise, that'll stay the same. You can change their first name, last name in here. You can also update their email address, update their edits or their notes as well. As a system admin in Front Door, if you have the user management roles for Front Door, you can also go in here and reset their password. Let's say someone went out on vacation. They had forgot their password from a week ago. You can sit here and reset a password. If you click on that, it's going to take a second and it's going to just generate a random password for you. You can either print this off. If you did have the email rights or the email setup in your system, it'll push out an email saying, hey, your password has been reset. Otherwise, copy that, paste it into an email, and tell that person to go in, use that once, and then reset their password to whatever it is. So you do have the ability to kind of help that person out by resetting passwords rather than having to delete everything out and creating a new user for them in there. We can also remove users as well. So let's say you have some turnover at your facility and that person, you don't want to have a user account for them anymore. You don't want to have them have access, whether they left on good terms or not. You just maybe want to just clean up your user settings on there. We can click on this. It's going to give you a confirmation screen to say, yes, I do want to remove that user. And then there, John Doe is gone on there. So you do have that flexibility of being able to manage, edit, assign roles. And this is a great way to kind of really kind of customize that access for those multiple users. I know a lot of our customers are really smaller facilities where they might just, everybody uses the admin role or the admin user account for everything. Well, they'll just log in, use admin, go in there, do whatever they need, so on and so forth. But when you do open up your system to a lot of different players, like we were saying, like maybe the school district, some different departments at your city or whatever it may be, Parks and Rec or whatever it is, you have that flexibility of being able to restrict and grant them access to as much or as little as you want in the software. So the user roles is really powerful for those different situations. And then again, all that user management is done out in the front door software. It's not done in the actual individual software itself. So Cablecast or Carousel, you're not going to be able to do anything with users. It's all done in front door with assigning your roles, permissions, and creating your user accounts.